Good morning. I am Jenny Hobbs, and I serve on the board of DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church. I welcome everyone to our service this morning and welcome visitors to our open and inclusive community. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold that there are many spiritual paths to truth and meaning, and we support one another as we each explore these paths. I would like to especially welcome our guests and welcome again those who have visited us before. Visitors, it is the custom of our congregation to invite you to stand and give your name and where you are from if you feel comfortable doing so. Are there any visitors who would like to introduce themselves? Anyone? Oh, hi. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. Anyone else? Well, welcome to everyone and to everyone visiting today. Thank you for joining us. Please join us after the service for, well, it's lemonade hour still. Coffee hour will be soon. Hold tight. We would love to have a chance to get to know you better. Our Director of Religious Education, Steve Cooper, our Congregational Life Coordinator, Mary Law, and Reverend Mike Walker, our Interim Minister, would be happy to know you, and our members are eager to meet you. I will also be present after the service in Creeves Hall and would be happy to speak to you as well. For those of you who are live streaming via YouTube, please be aware that during times of sharing joys and concerns, the live stream will go blank, but the live stream will return again after joys and concerns. Our service can be heard outside the glass doors at the back of the sanctuary should anyone feel the need to leave the service for any reason, and there are chairs provided for your convenience. I do have one more announcement. You'll see this in your order of service as well, but help wanted. Our church is best when we do church together. The Board of Trustees is seeking fun, creative, and motivated individuals for key roles. If not now, when? And if not you, who? Karen, please see Karen Peck in Creeves Hall after the service. There's Karen right there. And together, let's live our principles and have some fun. Finally, as we begin our service, please silence all electronic devices. Thank you.
We light our chalice this morning for lifelong sharing. In the words of Mother Teresa, love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning. Love has to be put into action, and that action is service. Whatever form we are, able or disabled, rich or poor, it is not how much we do, but how much love we put into the doing. It is a lifelong sharing of love with others. May it be so. Good morning. My name is Kat Gelder, and I am the chair of the Sunday Services Committee here at our church. We have a very special welcome to extend this morning, which is on my phone and not in my script. I intended to be fully prepared, but our interim minister, Mike Walker, and his partner, Glenn Morrison, I got it right? Mike began work here on August 1st. And as part of his ministry process, he requested that we hold normal services for the first couple weeks so that he can see how our church works. His first service will be on August 18th, and we know that everyone is excited to meet them, and so we encourage you to say hello to them after the service and during lemonade hour. And before we continue with the service, Reverend Mike has a couple words to share with us. So come on up.
Please sing with me. Thank you. In this month where our theme is intention, I wanted to share with you my intention as I'm just arriving and just getting to know you. And it has a lot to do with that song, and this is just a teaser for next Sunday. Glenn and I have felt so welcomed by this whole community, and I want to say thank you for that. And I want to share with you that my intention is to extend that welcome also in the work that I do with you, in inviting new people in everything that happens in this community over the next couple of years. The words really resonate with me. Come, come, whoever you are, whether you be a wanderer or a worshiper or maybe a lover of leaving. This is not a caravan of despair. We are a caring community. We're here for each other, and we're here to bring our values into the world. That's the work that we're called to do, and I'm looking forward to doing that with you over the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Mike. We're very much looking forward to our work with you. So today, as Reverend Mike said, during this month of intention, we will consider our long-term commitments, the promises that we have made either to ourselves or to other people for a very long time. What do we love about the people and the groups and the places that we commit ourselves to? What challenges do we encounter? And what rewards do we receive? And what do we sacrifice for those commitments? We will hear 4 stories about long-term commitment today. First, in our time to gather, the story of Wangari Maathai, the first African woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize. She's a woman deeply committed to peace, to her country, and to the environment. And then we will hear from 3 past presidents of our congregation, Joe Gano, Agnes Kovacs, and Dean Reschke. I invited them to speak about their commitments to our church, I invited them to speak about their commitments to any person or group and not necessarily to our church. But I mentioned their service to our church because I believe that it demonstrates the dedication and wisdom that they have gathered in their journeys of commitment. I invite us all to consider what commitments in our lives we have held for a long time, or hope to hold for a long time, and what wisdom these experiences bring to our journeys.
It is time to gather, and this is the time to share a story or lesson for all ages, to set us in the framework of today's service and religious education class. Today I'm going to share with you the story of Wangari Maathai and the trees of Kenya. The story is called Mama Miti. On the highlands of Africa, near forests and plains and a huge salt lick, Wangari was born. The face of Mount Kenya smiled down on her. People told stories of how, in the old days, sometimes the sun shone too bright, too long, and droughts came. Creatures suffered, plants wilted, people fought. So the men held ceremonies under the Mugumu, the spreading sacred fig tree. And the skies blessed them with shimmering rains to quench their thirst and water their farms. These are the stories that Wangari listened to about herself as she grew up. And that's how she came to love and respect trees. That's how she came to be wise in the tradition of her family and village, of her country and continent. When Wangari grew up, she worked in the city, but she always remembered her roots. She planted trees in her backyard and sat under them to refresh her body and spirit. One day, a poor woman came from the Western Valley to see the wise Wangari. Her children peeked out from behind her at the smiling woman in bright blue cloth with squiggles all through it, like tadpoles squirming in a pool. "I have too little food to feed my family," said the poor woman. "There is no longer a job for me in the timber mill, and I have no other skills. What can I do?" Wangari took the woman's hands and turned them over. She took the children's hands one by one. "These are strong hands. Here are seedlings of the Maburi Meru tree. Plant them. Plant as many as you can and eat the berries. Tayu Maumba, peace, my people." The woman and her children returned home and planted trees with their strong hands, one by one. And in the years to come, when flowering season was over, the family ate the shiny round fruits. They shared with their neighbors who carried home the seeds, planted them, and grew their own Maburo Meru trees. Another woman came to the wise Wangari, as poor as the first. This one traveled from the mountain in the south. Her daughters stood before her, thin as ropes. "My daughters and I walk hours every day to find firewood to cook with," said the poor woman. "It takes so long. We have no time for anything else. What can I do?" Wangari took the woman by the arms. "Those arms are strong," she said. "Plant a tree. Here are seedlings of the mukunduri. This tree makes good firewood. Plant as many as you can. Tayu Mayamba, peace, my people." The woman and her daughters planted those seedlings, and in time the trees grew huge with many wide branches. The woman and her daughters cut branches for warmth, and they shared new seedlings with their neighbors who carried them home and grew their own mukunduri trees. Word passed from woman to woman until all over Kenya, women knew about the wise Wangari, and they came to her from every direction, one after another, as the years went by. "Our goats are starving," said a woman from the northern desert. "I have barely enough food to feed my family. How can my husband feed the animals too?" Plant a tree, a mahanjandi. The leaves are good animal fodder. Plant as many as you can. Tayu Mayamba, peace my people. "My cows are sick," said another from the savannah. "I have no money to buy medicine for them." Plant a tree, a Mthwaka Watihi. The leaves cure gall sickness in cattle. Tayu Mayamba, peace my people. "Wild animals come in the night and steal my chickens," said a woman from a fishing village, and she shook her head in worry. Plant a tree, a makawa. Its thorns will keep out predators. Tayu Mayamba, peace my people. "My home fell apart," came a cry from another woman who had come all the way from the coast. "We have no shelter." Plant a tree, a mulahaka'ua. The timber makes good building poles. Tayu Mayamba, peace my people. Wangari told women to plant murugano, whose branches make good stakes for training yam vines. She told them to plant mahudi as a living fence around their animal yards. She told them to plant migoya, whose leaves could be wrapped around bananas to ripen them. She told them to plant moringa from the pure joy of their white flowers. And when a woman from her own village came lamenting that the water in her stream was too dirty to drink, Wangari told her to plant makuyu, the sacred fig, the drinker of water, which acts as a natural filter to clean streams. Tayu Mayamba, peace my people. Soon clean, clear waters teemed with black wiggling tadpoles like the ones on Wangari's cloths, like the ones Wangari marveled at in the waters when she was small, when Kenya was covered with trees and animals, when people lived in peace with nature. All over the countryside, the trees that had disappeared came back. Nairobi, the capital city, had been known as Kianuni, the place where there are many minu trees. Now it was Kianuni again. Kenya was strong once more, strong and peaceful. Wangari changed a country, tree by tree. She taught her people the ancient wisdom of peace with nature, and now she is teaching the rest of the world. She is known these days as Mama Midi, the mother of trees. A green belt of peace started with one good woman offering something that we can all do: plant a tree. Tayu Mayamba, peace my people. Please stand and body or spirit. The kids will leave with me to go to religious education after we sing the first verse. We'll be singing song number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
Going
Before we begin sharing joy, I am on top of it today. Before we begin sharing joys and concerns today, I would like to light a candle and hold a moment of silent witness for the suffering and injustice that so many in our country have experienced this week. In particular, for the men, women, and children who were victims of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement raid in Mississippi, for those who are imprisoned for seeking amnesty in our country, and for victims of gun violence, notably in Chicago, Dayton, Ohio, and El Paso, Texas, but surely in many other areas of our country as well. When our grief and anger at these events wound our hearts, may our compassion and our yearning for justice lead us through pain and into power. May we find the one step that we can take today to help shape a more just future tomorrow, and may each step lead always towards another. Thank you. And now we begin the time set aside for you to share a joy or concern from your personal life with our beloved community here. I now invite you to come forward, tell us your name, and share briefly about what is happening in your life. Let me move the In his essay, Buddhist Understandings of Right Intention, Philip Moffat writes, "Setting intention, at least according to Buddhist teachings, is quite different than goal-making. It is not oriented toward a future outcome. Instead, it is a path or practice that is focused on how you are being in the present moment. Your attention is on the ever-present now in the constantly changing flow of life. You set your intentions based on understanding what matters most to you and make a commitment to align your worldly actions with your inner values. As you gain insight through meditation and wise reflection and moral living, your ability to act from your intentions blossoms. It is called a practice because it is an ever-renewing process. You don't just set your intentions and then forget about them. You live them every day."
Good morning. I am Joe Gano, and Kat has asked me to talk about long-term commitments. I assure you this will be a very short talk. I can't imagine why she asked me to do this. I've only been a member here for 42 years, and Jane and I have only been married for 49 years. I make significant support contributions to all of these, but that is only a small but still very important dimension of a long-term relationship. So what is long-term and what is commitment? On the surface, simply defining these terms is easy enough. But that's as far as that would go on the surface. Everyone here can visualize a relationship with something or someone that qualifies as being long-term. Well, you can if you're over 35 years of age. For any of us that have been in a long-term relationship, we know it's only natural for them to change over time. And as you get to know somebody or something on a deeper and deeper level, your comfort with that individual or group and how much you share with them changes, creating what is often a vast difference between how you acted when you first met or got involved versus how you might act a year or two down the road. Often the shifting of this dynamic is what makes a relationship even stronger or can possibly make it fail. This dynamic has always been present and will continue to be present as long as there are relationships to be had. But how that dynamic influences the choices of people or groups involved will continue to change with the times. This is especially true with relationships that exist within the fast-paced world in which we live today. As a result, we are presented with options that have never existed before, and how those options might change long-term commitment and the dynamics that exist within relationships has yet to be fully seen. In all cases, communication will still dominate as the most important aspect of the relationship. Among individuals and many groups, the day-to-day interface regarding seemingly trivial concerns will come to the front as the critical barometer of compatibility that will endure. The seeming triviality is only a signpost for deeper issues, closer to the bone, so to speak, and the transparency and care with which they are dealt lights the way to how feelings are shared across the broad spectrum of concerns. The manner in which the inner core of feelings is developed together that forms the guardrails for how that relationship will fall or flourish going forward. This is not limited to individual relationships at home or at work. It works even in the context of how we feel about our church. We meet at the front door, maybe a service, maybe a magazine article, maybe a respected friend talks well about our organization. We stick our feet in the water, so to speak, shoes on, shields up, phasers set to escape, maybe. But something rings our chime and we feel a sense of kinship with the people of this foreign universe and find that our language is not all that different. I suggest that we don't dive whole body too early on, but continue to be courted, as it were. We commit in small ways to small things. Early signs of compatibility, small commitment. Then things progress and a higher degree of commitment is called for. Committee work. Oh gosh, what can that lead to? Higher commitment, you think? Okay, so what is commitment? Well, the many web dictionaries were helpful here. Making a commitment involves dedicating yourself to something, like a person or a cause. Before you make a commitment, think carefully. Commitment is what transforms the promise into reality. It is the words that speak boldly of your intentions, and the actions which speak louder than words. Another definition of commitment is an agreement or pledge to do something in the future, especially an engagement to assume a financial obligation at a future date. Remember that part. The steps I outlined here are not unusual and signify what I refer to as creeping commitment. And before too long, you can be neck deep in a wonderful situation. Now be on guard for this. Some things are going to happen that will shake the foundations of what is going on, rock the boat, so to speak. If you are neck deep and someone rocks the boat, that could have a bad outcome. Someone will say something that you don't agree with. Twice. On Sunday, the minister will say too much about this and not enough about that, and other things. This is when you put everything under the microscope and decide that you stayed with this so far, it felt good, it developed meaning for you, and you have all these new friends. You think on balance, this is worth a great deal to you. Now is when a commitment becomes long-term, not before this. And remember the financial part. That goes with it.
Thank you, Joe. And now I invite us to rise in body or spirit and to join in singing song number 318, We Would Be One. We will sing both verses.
When Kat asked us to speak today, she forwarded to us today's reading about intention. I found the reading amazingly helpful as I began to think about my intentions, my commitments in my life. The reading, as you have heard, explains that a goal is thinking about the future, while intentions, commitments, are thinking about being present in the now. When I think about my intentions in life, I can loosely group them into 4 categories: marriage, children and grandchildren, my career, and my religion. Bill and I just celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary. So yeah, the commitment is there. Enough said, right? Anyone in a relationship knows that it takes work, commitment. There are always good times and times that are more troublesome. In a relationship, you have to focus each day on working to establish a we, a you, and a me. Compromise, I think, is the key word. I think vows should be to love, to honor, and to compromise. And I think sometimes you have to compromise on what compromise even means. Yes, of course you plan for the future, but you have to focus on each day in order to get there. It's the focusing on the now that gets you to the future. Being a parent is another relationship that requires focusing on every day. Parents quickly realize that time flies as they watch their children and grandchildren grow. Bill and I have 2 daughters and 2 grandchildren, and we could gladly brag for days about each of them, if only given the opportunity. It takes, however, living one day at a time, focusing on the now, in order to help them meet their life's daily challenges. And again, of course, you plan for the future, but you have to take life one day at a time, be there when needed, and being willing to take a step back when that helps. You have to know what the now is asking for in order to have the commitment to parenthood and grandparenthood. And as for my career, I've been very lucky. I knew from about the age of 4 that education is where I wanted to be. I can remember lining up my dolls around my bedroom and teaching them to read and having to learn the alphabet. While I knew where I wanted to end up, I still had to take it one day at a time. My commitment to getting into a college with a strong teacher program was achieved by focusing on the now and knowing what it took to get to the future. My job and every job that I've had has been enriched because I focus on the now, enjoying each task and each day. But for today, I think the intention, commitment that Kat was hoping I'd spend most of my time talking about is my intention to my religion. I have to take a step back into history to tell you how we became UUs. When Wendy, our oldest daughter, was about 5 years old, we lived in a very Catholic neighborhood. Most of her friends and playmates were Catholic. So after some time there, Wendy started asking, on an annoyingly regular basis, "What church do we go to?" Bill and I took turns making up answers. We belong to the Let's Read the Sunday Paper group. We belong to You Can Watch as Many Cartoons as You Want to. We belong to the Would Rather Sleep Late group. However, being a very precocious child, none of this worked, and the same question persisted. We were sharing this story with some dear friends of ours who were UUs, and they calmly said, "You're closet UUs. Come to church with us." So we went to the Des Moines UU Church, and as they say, the rest is history. For me, finding Unitarian Universalism was like coming home. It offers the personal and spiritual growth and the community of friends that I was seeking. While in Des Moines, I joined several committees, made many friends, and began my religious journey. In June of 1990, we moved to Winfield, Illinois, and began coming to DUUC, and we joined this church in November of 1991. Being a member of DUUC for 28 years means I've seen lots of change here. I date back to Reverend Kendall Gibbons. Since Kendall Gibbons, we have had several ministers and several interims. We have built a new sanctuary. We have seen growth and decline in membership numbers. We have seen strong budget years, and we have seen budget years that were too tight for comfort. As a congregation, we have laughed and we have cried together, and together we have learned and grown. For some, all of this change was reason to leave. And I have to admit, in the throes of some of the tougher times, it would have been really easy to walk away and simply say, it's somebody else's problem. But for me, being a UU means commitment, intention. For me, this religion and this church are places where I find personal growth and community. It is here that I have passed on my values to my children and my grandchildren. Here I hear questions that I have to search my values in order to find the answers that are right for me. Listen to our opening words that you hear each Sunday. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold that there are many spiritual paths to truth and meaning, and we support one another as we each explore these paths. That is my commitment, my intention to the now. I want to continue to define my journey, my values, my beliefs, and my place in this community. I have made many wonderful, supportive friends here, each day, one day at a time. I come here knowing that I will grow, that I will be supported, and that I have a loving community to help me along my path. That, to me, deserves my ongoing commitment, my intention. Through good times and tougher times, through disagreement and through change, my religion and my commitment to DUUC is my intention to now. Thank you.
I'm really struck that Kat had given us three this assignment, and we certainly didn't talk with each other, but there's a similar thread or two that runs between all three of them. So, and I have to tell you, it's an honor for me to be sharing the pulpit with Joe and Agnes, because I have admired them all these years for their dedication to the church. I salute you. I'd like to start by sharing with you a personal value that I hold very dear, and it comes from the summer of my 14th year, when two friends and I decided to join with a group to go to Quetico Provincial Park in Canada. This park is huge. It's 65 miles by 45 miles. It has no roads, no motorized vehicles, just a bunch of lakes and trails to portage from. Before we left out to go into the bush, our guide said something that was profound to me, and it's stuck with me ever since. He said, "Remember, you always leave a campsite better than you found it. You always leave a campsite better than you found it." To me, that has seemed like a moral obligation to honor those who came before you, who created something for you, and you honor them best by improving on what they did for those that follow you. This value has been a driver of my own intentionality ever since. It's given me a beacon in my career, in my family, in my volunteering. It's also been a driving aspiration in my formal roles as president of this congregation, as an elected official for a number of years here in Naperville. I'm just so thankful for this value because it's helped solidify my commitment, okay? And maybe especially in tough times, which is often. But you know what? A value like this is not enough, because most of what we do to improve the campsite is working in consort with others. And that's not always easy, is it? A long-term commitment to a church, for example, or to a life partner is not always neat and tidy. Now, I'm lucky in this regard because last Thursday I celebrated my 38th wedding anniversary with Linnell, and I can honestly say that we're still as crazy about each other as we were at the beginning, so. Right, Linnell? But we're also lucky here at DUC too, because folks here really like their church and work like heck for it. So I'd like to reflect a bit on the parallels between a commitment to a church and a life partner, because I think these are a bit instructive. I certainly don't want to impose any ideas about structures of relationships, nor do I want to suggest that ending relationships is a bad thing. It may be an important and necessary thing. But for me, there is a sort of grace and wisdom that comes through the process of remaining committed, especially when things are not neat and tidy. About 20 years ago, I was listening to a Terry Gross interview of Salvador Minuchin, who was one of the pioneers of family therapy. Terry said to him, "With all we know, why is it that half of all marriages in this country still end in divorce?" Minuchin's answer caught her off guard. He said, "Given that you have two people coming together, each coming from different cultures, even if they live next door, they have different families, different rules, different roles, different ways of interacting. It's a miracle that any of them last at all." In that light, maybe it's a minor miracle that all of us are here together today, at this hour, in this room. I wonder. Since intention and gravitational forces pull us into relationships, how do we stay committed to them? I'd like to suggest that staying committed is very much an act of faith, which for me and Merriam-Webster means a fidelity to one's promises, or a sincerity of one's intentions. For me, this is a faith that asks each to best serve the other, a faith that shows the courage to act without knowing a specific outcome. It's a little like the faith of parenting. You're intentional, you do what you can, and you just hope for the best, but you let go because you have no control. It's the kind of faith that overcomes and even transcends the fleeting vicissitudes of life. It'll come as no surprise to you that in happy long-term relationships, it's not unusual for partners at times to feel frustrated, right? Angry, bored, even question the relationship. But we don't bail when these pop up, do we? We deal with them, move on, and pretty soon feel grateful for our continued connection. There is a sort of knowing that the total is more than the sum of its parts and that our faith was well placed. As a marriage and family therapist for nearly 4 decades, I do feel a professional obligation to tell you, by the way, that science has identified the single most important characteristic of successful, lasting relationships. Are you ready for it? Kindness. That's right, kindness. And conversely, the single biggest predictor of relationship dissolution is not that there's no disagreement, but it is how disagreements begin. Whether these beginnings are harsh, critical, or demeaning, or instead whether they're honest, but respectful and compassionate. Kindness and grace, showing grace in disagreement, also have implications for church life as well, and how we maintain our commitment here. I believe it's helpful to intentionally approach our participation here with the same kind of faith, and one that transcends those very similar relationship challenges like frustration, disappointments, and even doubts. Kaya Iverson, a past president here, and I don't see her here this morning, has said, "You're a member of a church when your church first disappoints you and you remain a member anyway. You deal with it, you move on, and then you're at an auction dinner or a choir rehearsal or in a spiritual direction group or on a way for a protest or stand on every corner or in a service that you were inspired by the music or the words, or you feel the intimacy during joys and concerns and you go, oh yeah, that's why I'm here." In the movie Good Will Hunting, the therapist played by Robin Williams, you might remember this, was urging Will to take the risk of intimacy in a love relationship. And as Will seemed scared to death that this would lead to her seeing his deep flaws and rejecting him, Williams said, "You're not perfect, sport, and let me save you the suspense. This girl that you met, she isn't perfect either. But the question is whether or not you're perfect for each other." That's the whole deal. That's intimacy. Finally, when thinking of long-term commitment, I'm reminded of something Confucius said. "When looking for water, it is best to dig one hole 100 feet deep than 10 holes 10 feet deep. So when each of us who come from disparate places with different histories, ways, ideas, even theology, considers expressing our values intentionally and in communion with each other, and we seek to dig deeper and deeper in our search for water together, we know that we are not perfect, nor are our partners or friends, and neither is our church. But maybe, just maybe, we're perfect for each other. And with and through each other over time, maybe we can leave our campsite better than we found it. So maybe.
Thank you so much, Joe and Agnes and Dean. We really appreciate you taking the time to share with us this morning. Reverend A. Powell Davies writes, "Let me tell you why I come to church. I come to church and would, whether I was a preacher or not, because I fall below my own standards and need to be constantly brought back to them. I am afraid of becoming selfish and indulgent, and my church of the free spirit, brings me back to what I want to be. I could easily despair, doubt and dismay could overwhelm me, but my church renews my courage and my hope. It is not enough that I should think about the world and its problems at the level of a newspaper report or a magazine discussion. It could too soon become too low a level. I must have my conscience sharpened until it goads me to the most thorough and responsible thinking of which I am capable. I must feel again the love that I owe to others. I must not only hear about it, but feel it, and in church, I do. I am brought toward my best, in every way toward my best." The offering for the support of this church will now be given and gratefully received. Thank you for your generosity. have to admit I was a little nervous to do a service on long-term commitment because there is an element of luck to long-term commitment. If, as Dean mentioned, kindness is the most powerful predictor of a long-term commitment, what if I simply don't have the luck to find the person, the group, the country that offers me true kindness? And because so often long-term commitment can become the punching bag, right? We joke about it. The old ball and chain needs me home by 6 p.m. I was just talking to my husband about it the other day. I was offered a volunteer opportunity at church, and I said, because what I need in my life is another committee. Commitment can be grueling. It can be difficult. It can be challenging. And yet, sometimes what I need in my life really is another committee. And so I invite us this morning to envision commitment not as the weighty anchor that we sometimes jokingly compare it to, but as a fire that burns within each of us, pulling us toward greater connection with each other and ever greater intention in our living. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit and join us in Song 1028, The Fire of Commitment. We will sing just the first 2 verses. Thank you, Vera. I leave you with the words of Annie Forster, as far as love flows, as far as our hope grows, as far as our yearning goes, we are no farther from one another. And now I invite you to turn and greet one another, especially those you do not know, and enjoy Lemonade Hour. Thank you.